Hey folks, welcome back to the Inside the Mix podcast, and this is another Synth Pals Virtual Pub episode. We're a bit lighter on the ground this time. We've got the proverbial team captains of Aisle 9 and Neon Highway joining me today. But as I always say with these things, it is quality over quantity, so we'll run with that. So whilst I'm on the topic of the Synth Pals Virtual Pub, if you are listening and you would like to participate in the next virtual pub, or maybe one in the future, there is going to be a link in the episode description of this episode, and you can click on that and you can reserve yourself a seat. All you need as a prerequisite is a drink and maybe some form of question to participate, but it's very informal otherwise. So just as a recap on my rambling there, all you need to do is click on the link to reserve a seat if you want to take part in a future episode. So I'm going to go from left to right because there's only two of you. R9, aka Tim, how are you? And thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Mark. Yeah, good. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
lovely stuff. So you've now got a hat trick of attendances, as does Neon Highway. Carl, how are you?
I'm incredibly hungover, but I'm doing good. Mate.
Yes. Would you like to fill us in on the story of why you're hungover?
Because I was allowed back out yesterday in the public, so I took that opportunity to go drinking, and basically drank with my wife for 12 hours.
You had your ankle bracelet removed there. I was allowed back out.
my hip bracelet, I know. I had my replacement hip operation 6 weeks ago, and that was the 6 weeks up yesterday, so the first thing I did was go out and get absolutely slaughtered at the nearest pub. And it was great.
Standard. Yeah. So what drink have you got with? Have you got an alcoholic drink now? The proverbial hair of the dog.
I have Irn Bru looking after me tonight.
Oh. Very nice.
Do you get much of that down there?
I was just about to say we do. I can't say I drink it much, but have you ever had the Irn Bru strip?
Yeah. I used to eat that all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm basically 90% Irn Bru, mate.
I've never made it through a can of Irn Bru. Yeah.
It's the glass bottles are the best ones. The 750 milliliter bottles. They are there are a number of those that must get consumed every Sunday in Scotland. You know, after a heavy drinking session on Saturday, they just sort you right out.
Hold on, you can get glass bottles of Irn Bru?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh, they're the best. Like glass Irn Bru out of a can, out of a plastic bottle, that's fine. But the premium stuff is the glass bottle. That is just it's gorgeous.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I've got a close Scottish friend, and he's never told me that.
Mate,
that existed.
Well, when you make it up to Scotland, I'll make sure you get one to take away with you.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the podcast on tour.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I say I'm going to. Well, whether I do or not is a different thing. But Tota, who was on the podcast, she's been on a couple of times. She says she's sort of pleading the case for taking it on tour and interviewing people. So I don't know. So I'll probably get as far as Bristol, and then or maybe the Midlands. I don't know. Let's see how far I get. But I think it'd be good. Maybe 2023. That's a goal. Maybe to do 3 episodes on tour somewhere. It'll have to be more than that to make it worth going on tour. Anyway, I'm rambling. So, Tim, what I'd like to start with is a recent venture of yours, and I was lucky enough to be the first hunted person. Careful how I say that. And of the Synthwave Hunters. Can you tell our story? Tell our audience a bit more about Synthwave Hunters.
Yes, as ever, it's one of my accidental discoveries. I suddenly thought I'm going to meet Marc, which was we've lived in this virtual world for so long, you know. I was actually going to meet a real synthwave producer, so I decided to make it into a bit of an episode, which is on my YouTube channel. And I decided that I was, synthwave hunting. Really, this is what I was up to, following in the steps of the fantastic program on TV where is it hunted? It's just hunted, isn't it? Yeah, where people have to spend their entire time escaping, like, you know, I wasn't given all the powers of the state, though, unfortunately, which was a shame, you know. You know, I didn't have CCTV camera and all the rest of it, footage, but, like, you know, I was only going to Taunton, I live in Watchet, so I didn't particularly need it, and I knew where Mark was going to be, but, you know, so it was a little bit rigged, but, you know, I was just like, this would be great, like, you'll sort of film it while I go and actually hunt down Mark. And then we end up having a really good time in the pub and a chat, and it was, I decided that maybe there was a bit of a series in this. So, like you were saying, taking the you know, the sort of podcast on tour, I thought maybe I need to go and hunt other synthwave producers wherever they may be. You never know.
Did you come up
with turning up?
Did you come up with any genius ideas when the two of you were in the pub? Any brand new marketing strategies, or did you write a new song?
Oh,
virtually?
yeah. Well, we did. We did come up with a few, didn't we?
Okay,
Mark,
we did.
Mark can fill you in. Yeah, you've got a better memory.
So we there's a local, I guess you call it. It's not a music shop, is it? I'm not gonna name it for fear of us potentially not going there. But it's a place where you can go and play many synthesizers, and we came up with the idea of at least myself and Tim going there for a day or two, and then noodling around and see if we can come up with some music, and then documenting the process and releasing it, and then ideally we'd set a date and then extend the invite out to other producers and say, we're doing this, do you want to participate?
It would also mean we could afford to go. Because
that's exactly it.
May need another few producers on board, because it's quite a cool establishment. So yeah, it should be a very exciting thing to get up to, where they have a lot of genuine gear. You know,
this could be a good call to action for those producers that are listening. If you would like to get involved with said project, whereby we get together, it might most likely be over a weekend, and thrash it out in a studio full of synths from the ages, how could they let us know? Just DM the podcast if this is of interest to you, and then we'll see what we can put together, because as Tim rightly said there, it's not financially viable for the two of us to do it, because it's quite pricey.
It is, but I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking of it as, like, you know, because studios vary in their pricing and things, but like it's one of those things where, like, it is really hard to get all of that gear. They have got, like, an unbelievable amount of, like, you know, we sit there with the virtual versions of all these things, but, you know, to get on all the real machines, and of course that might produce quite a different result, not only sonically, but, like, you know, I think actually using the machines rather than, like, you know, so a bit more hands-on approach might be quite interesting. Plus, I'm sure there's a pub nearby.
More tactile. Oh, it's Devon. There'll be a pub nearby somewhere, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
No doubt. Is that? I
think it's 24-hour lock-ins only as well, so that would be good. Yeah. They
have accommodation.
Yeah, you get the accommodation as part of the thing, and it's 24 hours, so you have to be in. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh,
that sounds amazing.
Now there's accommodation. It doesn't seem that. I mean, it's still pricey for two people.
Yeah.
But now there's accommodation thrown in. There you go. Carl, make your way down from Glasgow, and just hop on a plane. We'll pick you up at Exeter Airport. Happy days. He's not saying yes or no right now.
No, he hasn't said yes or no. He's only just got to his local pub.
Yeah.
We're trying to talk him to come down to Exeter.
I mean, the last time I was down your way, I had to get a flight to Gatwick and then a flight across the country, but there must be a more direct option.
Did you?
There's Bristol as well.
You can fly to Edinburgh from Exeter.
Oh, I gotta go to Edinburgh.
Is that...
It's the other side of the country for me. It's the other side of Scotland.
If you get a flight to Exeter, because I live in Exeter, that'll be easy. I'll just pick you up from the airport.
Yeah.
This is a total... We're trying to arrange
it. Live on a podcast, arranging.
Yeah.
You know. Well, then, let me just go on to the...
And we need Russell too, of course, who, like, you know, obviously, because you could just pick Russell up on the way.
I was going to say, car share. Make your way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's an idea. So once again, if you would like to get involved, do let us know. I don't know how feasible it is, but now there's accommodation involved. It is,
and there will be filming.
More,
be warned. There will be.
We could set it to some
hunting.
Sort of. That's such a. You could so easily get that name wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, Synthwave Hunters. So what we'll do is that we'll move on from the planning an excursion of some sort, and the audience listening, prior to going live with the recording, we were discussing just candidly playlist and playlist evolution, and I thought it would be a good topic to cover because playlists are important to showcasing your music, and also getting on a big playlist it's notable in your sort of streams you're listening on Spotify. But what's more and more happening now is creating your own playlist to showcase your music and getting others involved. So I thought it'd be quite cool to just have a chat about playlist experience and do's and don'ts and that sort of thing. So, Carl, I think it'd be quite interesting to start with yourself. So you mentioned one way that you use playlists, which was quite interesting. Do you want to tell our audience a bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as time was going on and I was releasing more and more music, I still only release singles because I write a track, I put it out, write another track and I put it out. I never have any sort of grand scheme for an album, a cohesive album with a theme around sounds or art or whatever it may be. So everything's one single to the next, and I thought I need a way where people don't have to go in and find this stuff just to listen to it. So I just created a playlist just for Neon Highway, which is just Neon Highway complete, and it's really a sort of journey through the releases from the first release up to whatever the most recent release is. So I think there's probably about 21 tracks on there just now in my own playlist. And the feedback that I've had from people listening to it is that it's really interesting hearing the evolution from, track one, which was 3 years ago, and how my own composition and production and skills like that have improved, and how I've started to introduce different kinds of instrumentation into the songs and things like that. So I found that really useful. Feedback that I got recently, though, from another member of our group, I think it was Die Miami Die, said make sure that you change the cover of your playlist, because at the moment you haven't actually assigned a cover to it, and it's just throwing up various kind of cover art from the singles that are on that playlist. And he says it's super important that you get a custom piece of art for that playlist, because it will hook people in. It just makes it visually more appealing, and people will go to that playlist and have a wee sort of listen around through it. So I found that really interesting, and I have noticed that since that a lot of people who are very serious about the playlist sort of mechanism there, and I seen you nodding there, Tim, I think you would agree that getting that piece of cover art to promote the playlist essentially is much better than just having the default that Spotify assigns to it.
I think it works in two ways, actually. I mean, one, obviously it's more attractive. Two, it actually, and maybe that's not so important if it's just your own playlist on your showcasing your tracks, you might not expect to get that turning up in organic searches, but if you're trying to get a playlist and promote it, I mean, it is difficult to turn up in Spotify's sort of searching mechanism, because obviously there are a lot of playlists, but apparently if you don't do your own custom art, it just won't. So it's just one of their kind of things that they look for the custom artwork on the playlist. It's very easy to create. You can create in Canva or whatever. You can create it in very simple software. And then just upload it. But once you've done so, makes it more attractive and makes you more findable. I decided that, similarly to you actually, that I mean, unfortunately, I only have about 6 sort of tracks out or whatever. I don't have a lot of tracks, so people don't really need to have an enormous playlist of my stuff. But because it wouldn't be hard to find on my profile, I guess. But it was starting to come. So that not all of my tracks were on my profile. You only get, what is it, your first 4 or 5 or something turn up on your profile. So I put one together. But you get This Is Neon Highway or This Is Marc Matthews when you become officially recognised by Spotify as being important enough. Like someone like Zach, for instance, has his own one. No jealousy there, but like, you know, and so he's doing really well, and like Spotify have, like, you know, given him his this is Zach Vortex, you know, and so I decided that, you know, wouldn't be that hard to knock one up really, so I knocked up a This Is Aisle 9 one that is exactly the same as the Spotify one, and have created my own playlist that just says This Is Aisle 9. You may notice it's not by Spotify, and it is by Tim Benson, but, you know, yeah, so I've done the same thing as you, but, like, I've just knocked up my own. Well,
That's a very good idea.
Yeah, but, you know.
So going on the idea of cover art then, what do you think makes a good cover art design? That's probably the million-dollar question. What do you think stands out? Yeah, see, I don't know this, and I created custom cover art, and I toy with different ones all the time, but I guess when you think of, like, YouTube thumbnails and stuff like that, it seems to me like less is more in terms of, like, you don't want it to be text heavy, etc. But
no,
I don't know. Has anyone got any thoughts on what does and doesn't work?
It's really personal. I mean, for me, I typically don't put Neon Highway on the cover. I sometimes have the title of the track on the cover, but I think we've discussed this before. I work in a bit of a strange way in that I usually have the cover art before I've even started the song, and that cover art informs the direction of the song musically. I'm quite a visual person in that way, that the colours, the shapes, anything that's in that piece of cover art will almost sort of dictate where I'm going to go with the music. But it's really personal, you know, less is more. That you could get into that whole discussion about artificial intelligence. I know you had that discussion with Sunglasses Kid on last week's episode.
Oh yes, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. You know, it very much informs the music for me. I don't know what you and Tim sort of do with yours.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, it depends whether it's playlists or, like, you know, we're talking about Mark, or whether we're talking about, you know, tracks, you know, because I think
I see. Yeah, I was going to say playlists. Yeah, I think playlists.
Right.
Yeah, because playlists, I think you've got to. First of all, it's the name, isn't it? If you're doing your own one for your own sort of cast on, then it's perhaps slightly different. But if you're doing sort of one for your artist, sort of playlist, you know, but you're going to add lots of other artists, you're creating your own playlist, then I think curator-wise, it's important to think of the SEO and the sort of, like, you know, you've got to think of a title that's going to be easily understood, I think. Like, you know, I mean, it's like I've got, like, sort of... But Synthwave Dreams is one of my ones, and, like, you know, Synthwave Rising Stars another one. But, like, which is sort of fairly straightforward, aren't they? I think they kind of give away what they're about, but, like, or the kind of... slightly the mood of the playlist as well, like, in the title, you know... you know, if you see something like Synthwave Dreams, you're not expecting cyberpunk. You know, it's kind of it's sort of going to be more on the mellow side. So yeah, I think that's quite important in the title. But my most successful playlist to date that I've spent more time on is probably a little bit weirdly titled, because I sort of that's a takeoff of now that's what I call synthwave. So that was directly a takeoff of the classic series of, like, sort of compilation albums from yesteryear, and I just thought, well, they've never done one for synthwave, so I'm going to make sure that there is one. But, like, you know, I mean, it seems a bit crazy when we're, you know, in the digital realm, and we're no longer, like, sort of, you know, we don't have compilation albums anymore in that kind of way. But, like, well, I suppose we still do, but, like, less so. They're not, you know, you haven't got big companies producing. You know, you used to get companies doing every year, like, they would do the best of, you know, like, you know, now this is dance, that's what I call dance 2022 or something like that. So, you know, but
Ministry of Sound.
Yeah, but for me, of course, that dictated what that cover was going to look like, because I had to do a rip-off of the cover that I'd, like, literally, you know, was alluding to. So I had my cover sorted out there. I just, again, Yeah, there's a theme here, ripping off somebody else's artwork. Yeah, I just ripped off their artwork. But like for Synthwave Dreams and for Rising Stars, I just sort of went for something kind of, of the genre, but like kind of eye-catching, but not, again, like not too busy, because that is a problem I think with album covers. Would you say as well, with art or for single covers? If it's too busy and too intricate, it's only sitting in this tiny little thing on your phone, and it doesn't want to have lots of writing and lots of detail. It's just got to, but it's got to give you a little bit of a mood. There you go, and you know what it is. It's kind of got to keep
I agree
simple.
with you there, mate. I think when I've come to creating artwork or anything along those lines, I always try to do as little as possible. I did. I mean, I told about the idea of the latest one of just having a blank square, just with the title. But then I thought, no, I can't do that. That's just
Your white
maybe I will for
album.
the next one. I think with just my very elaborate calligraphy style logo at the bottom would be quite nice. But I'm of that same mindset. But then again, I look at classic albums and I see some of the classic album covers, which look absolutely incredible, and there's a lot going on. But I think you're right with playlists. So my next question with regards to playlisting is, when it comes to curating, how do you grow a playlist? Because I know, Tim, you're quite good at this, because you've got a few playlists now that have good numbers and also a decent. I can see, because I've got tracks on them, and I can see plays daily. Because I know off air we had a discussion about playlists where you've got thousands of listeners and you're not seeing any plays. So what do you think is the key to success there?
Well, someone actually told me who has got a very big playlist. I mean, it's one of these people who's sort of tried to curate an enormously long playlist, but it's got insane numbers of people listening to it. So perhaps not a very good one if you're wanting streams, but I don't think that was their intention. They're almost just trying to kind of collate this huge library of amazing synthwave tracks. That was their idea, and they've been doing it for years, and they're a very serious curator in that way. So it's probably not a great thing if you're trying to get streams, but I could see what they were doing. But I asked him actually when I started mine, because I really didn't know how was the best way to do this, and he said one of the most important things is to listen to your playlist. And I know that sounds really daft, but I think a lot of people will put a playlist together, never listen to it. And if you don't listen to your own playlist, you don't know what it's like to listen to, so the order that it should go in and that sort of thing, and whether you should keep that track in or take it out or whatever. So, you're not curating in a way that's very hands-on. You're just like sort of putting a list of tracks together on, which I don't think really is curating. I sort of think it's important to sort of think of choosing the right artists, putting them in the right order, getting an order and a vibe for your whole playlist that makes it enjoyable for a listener. And that listening to your own playlist helps that. But also listening to your own playlist a lot, of course, gives streams to the artists who are on it. So, but that in turn has a net effect of like sort of the algorithm likes it, because it's seeing lots of plays off of that playlist, so that's got to be good, because the algorithm is always at work with these things. And also, I think it helps because it then has effect of people sort of looking when they look on their Spotify for artists and going, oh, I'm on that playlist and I'm getting streams back from that playlist. So they feel more positive about that playlist, don't they? Maybe they share that playlist when they get added to it. Maybe they apply to get onto it with their next track. So you start to, it's all, and then maybe they listen to the playlist as well, because you've actually created a playlist that's enjoyable. It's that whole sort of thing. You've got to be advertising it, you've got to be listening to it, and you've got to be offering something to artists who are on it, or want to be on it. So it's kind of mixing all of those together, I think, rather than just doing this kind of, I've started a playlist, I'm never going to listen to it, or, whatever. Which happens. I think a lot of people just magically expect they're going to do something for them. And, getting followers onto it and that sort of stuff, once you're on these things like daily playlists and SoundPlate and stuff like that, you can get people submitting, and then you will get a follow automatically. And so that, in a sense, doesn't mean that much. I mean, so you can have... I mean, it does mean something, and it's important for the playlist curator because it looks better the more followers you have. But underlying that, you've still got to keep the playlist being a real, living, interesting thing, I think. Not too long, you know, good tracks on it, change over the tracks regularly, that kind of thing, you know. So there's a lot goes into it, I think, to make it good, and I'm not saying by any means that I've got it completely sorted. I'm enjoying the journey of trying to do, but it does matter to me to try and produce one that's actually useful and good, and hopefully people enjoy listening to it.
I think it's quite exciting when you get a playlist like the ones that you've got there, Tim, because largely it's not the big names in a genre, it's people that you may not otherwise have heard of, and that's exciting because that's people are fresh talent, brand new music all the time. You know, it's you can access all those other bigger names easy. You know who they are. You can look them up on Spotify. You can listen to their albums, or you can buy their albums in various formats. You know that they've got that capital and that marketing behind them. But what you've got with your playlists is absolutely filling a space that needs to be filled in the genre. It's exciting as a fan of the music, and it's exciting for the artists that are involved.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's definitely what I'd like them to be like. And as you say, I've sort of had all these people submit things, and okay, it is my viewpoint on those tracks. I take it, you know, sort of, I might like one and not another, but you know, I'm trying to get something that sort of, maybe it's sort of like, you know, going to present to you if you're like a bit new to the genre, or you're like you're trying to discover. It's like Mark has said, like you just said, actually, you discovered a track on my playlist earlier, you know, whatever. So you're actually listening to it, and you know, you heard something that was new that you didn't know about, and then you went, oh, that track, and then, you know, I mean, we both know the artist, but like, you know, it's sort of, so hopefully it's really sort of offering something that means of value. I think that's the thing. Offering something of value is what I think is important. So, you know.
Yeah, I think to summarise all the points there, I think to summarise what Tim said initially was, I think you just need to nurture. I think nurture is the key to a playlist. It's like you say, you've got to listen to it for one, you've got to promote it, and then you've actually got to curate it in such a way that it makes sense. It's not just can I go on your playlist? Yes, here we go, sort of thing. Yeah. And also, like what Carl was saying there, in terms of it needs to have an appeal. And I think if you can also have a playlist that sort of fits in a gap somewhere, I think that's certainly going to help. And I think that comes with curation. If you curate it effectively and you've got a goal in mind, I think you'll find that gap and it'll stand out. But yeah, what about playlists on other platforms? I know you can do it on SoundCloud and a few others. Now, I can't profess... I think I've got a playlist on SoundCloud that I created about 2.5 years ago, and I looked at it the other day, and it's got artwork from 2.5 years ago, and I'm like, oof, I need to change that.
I've got the same.
But have you have you experienced any other platform success, or should we be aware of any others?
God, that's
the only one I can
think
is SoundCloud.
SoundCloud.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about success. The only other one I'd be aware of is the YouTube kind of mixes that you get, which are incredibly useful for music that you used to maybe buy in CDs in the 80s and 90s, and as we made that transformation across to Spotify and digital streaming platforms, a lot of that music isn't available on these platforms. You know, smaller bands, loads of bands that I love, and I'm sure it's the same in the vinyl format. There's hundreds of records out there that just never get transferred across to CD and never get transferred across to Spotify. And sometimes YouTube kind of fills that space because people have essentially created a mix within YouTube, which is just the tracks on those albums in the order that they should be in. And sometimes that's the only way to even get those albums now. So I quite like that, although I don't use it a lot.
Yeah, I totally forgot about YouTube playlists because I do it every week with the podcast. So obviously wasn't thinking that hard on that one.
And there's YouTube Music as well, isn't there? Which I get a bit confused the difference between YouTube Music and YouTube, but like, yeah, essentially there is YouTube Music as well, and that apparently playlists on that are really quite something, because a lot of people use YouTube Music rather than any other streaming platform. So, and they actually, you'll find a lot of distributors will distribute to YouTube Music, so you'll be on YouTube Music, and it's very easy, just like on YouTube, to put your playlist together. But apparently it's really quite important to do that, and it's something I haven't done. But Apple as well, I'm constantly a bit confused by what the deal is with that, because you can't go on and create a playlist, and yet various people seem to be sort of advertising that they are, or that they do Apple playlists, and I'm a bit confused because I'm not, well, again, how can you get involved with that if you're not paying for an Apple subscription? So I'm sort of feel like I'm locked out of doing anything with it anyway. So, and the same with Tidal, actually. You can do stuff on Tidal, and I took out one of their sort of free trials or something, or it was reduced rate for a few months, and I really liked Tidal. It was really good, actually, but I wasn't going to pay that amount of money. I was sort of more invested in Spotify, but I did put some playlists together, and Audius as well. Is that it? What's the one that's the one that's sort of says he flicking through his phone to find it. It's Audius Music, yeah.
Audius.
So that's a really strange platform, because it's kind of crypto, kind of based sort of thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I have to look into it, but basically it's sort of a bit like SoundCloud was a very long time ago, but it kind of rewards you for plays and various things, and I got a reward I won a playlist award on it, because I don't think anyone else had put up a playlist pretty much, and I put up a playlist and I've supposedly won 100 Audius, whatever that means, in crypto, which is roughly £100, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to chip it in or anything, but I was kind of it took me quite a while to actually get them to pay it to me. They decided to give me the award and not pay me, and then I sort of eventually sort of annoyed them enough that they decided to pay me. But so I've got it sitting in a crypto wallet somewhere, is some Audius, but bizarre. I know one of the, is it Vitamin Dream or whatever? Artist does a lot of stuff on Audius, and does a lot of stuff on with the crypto sort of space and music and stuff. It's been looking into that, so it's all a bit confusing, but it's interesting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the blockchain, because it's blockchain, isn't it? Cryptocurrency is built on blockchain. It's all very interesting. It's the same with like NFTs as well.
Yeah.
Because I know a few artists, and I think there was someone I interviewed way back at the beginning of the podcast is moving into the NFT realm. And I'm sure somebody else is as well. And I was wondering how NFTs would fit into music, but that's a whole other thing altogether.
I think Muse did that on the most recent album a couple of weeks ago.
Did they?
Yeah. It was like 100 limited copies with NFTs, and I can't remember what that entailed.
They've got
but
a bit more
it's
leverage than us, haven't they, really?
Yeah. It's very true.
Yeah. It's alright where you can do that. Do you remember the time when, this is a bit of a tangent now, when U2 put an album out on iTunes and it automatically downloaded to everyone's phone? I mean, that's narcissism right there.
Do you not remember the guy that came up with the app the next day to remove it from your iPhone, because everybody got it pushed to their iPhone? People were like, how did I get rid of this? So some genius kid designed an app that said, if you download this, it will remove U2 from your iPhone, and it just that app went ballistic. It was like, this is amazing.
I guess it did its job for them, though, didn't it? It did its job in the sense of it was people designing apps to remove them from it. It was it was a load of publicity, but I don't know why. They don't need publicity, do they? They're U2. I mean,
exactly. I mean, I think putting aside that it was U2, because I think a lot of people don't like U2. But I mean, in all credit to them, they've had some great songs in the past. I think they were just at that point in their career where everybody seemed to hate them. So when they get pushed onto the iPhone, it was like, maybe it wasn't the best choice, Apple, to choose that band to do this. But if it had been any other band, you might have looked at that and gone, that's actually a cracking idea. It might have been, it could have been thought out better with the option to receive it or not receive it, but it was something new to try. Unfortunately, it was U2 past their prime who were trying that, so they got a lot of kind of kickback on it.
Yeah. It's also, I think it's a testament to what Tim said there, is it worked, because it still comes up in conversation every now and again when I talk to people about iTunes and about promotional things and how U2 did that. But I suppose it's no different. It is different in a way. Like, if you're an artist and you give away your music for free, but I guess the consumer, the end user, has to go and then search it out and download it, rather than you could do that. You could airdrop your music. You could just go sit in Starbucks and just airdrop your latest release to everyone. someone's gonna listen to it. I wouldn't. I'd be like, well, I'm clearly not going to answer that, but
yeah, that's it. That's part of your Synth Hunter tour. Wherever you're going, not just Synth Hunter, but Synth
measures.
Pusher.
I'm just like airdropping my track. You are going to listen.
Who's this IO9 guy? Who does he think he is? You too?
Yeah, there's a sort of decaf latte with a copy of Miami Nights coming towards you. You haven't got an option.
But also, you were saying. I was going to say, Tim was saying how he sort of changes the tracks. But I think you change the tracks in a sensible way. It doesn't change from week to week. Personally, I don't understand playlists that completely change week on week, and people push it and say, check my playlist out this week. I'm like, oh God, I was just getting used to the last one. I actually really enjoy the playlist, or having it begin and end, knowing kind of musically in my head that one song ends and I go, oh, I know what's going to start next. And I said it to you before, Tim, because you removed Miami Nights off the start of Synthwave Dreams, and I was
removed my own
Miami
track
Nights?
off my playlist.
Scandal.
It's like, this was like, I love starting that playlist, and that's the track that kicks it off. And then I'm sure it used to go into Barbadelle, which was another beautiful track. And it's just like, I'm used to this playlist, but I don't warm to playlists that change every week or even every fortnight completely, like complete change. I'm just like, what's the point of it? It's almost not a playlist. It doesn't exist as an entity then.
That is interesting, because as a curator you're bound to sort of take in new things and want to change them, and also you need to kind of keep a flow to get more sort of follows and more interest in the playlist, new people into it. But you're right, I mean, when I listen to playlists, I so often like listening to, sort of something that is familiar, that's like a sort of really great album or something, or whatever, that you've got very used to the way one track flows into another. And I mean, some people may put it on shuffle or something, but I much prefer listening to it in order. Which again, people do say they want to be at the top of the playlist, because that happens a lot, and because say you've got a 7-hour playlist or something, you're the last person added on. Are you going to get any streams off of it? All these things, and people can get quite political and funny about things to do with playlists. It can get quite a tense area at times, and yet, I mean, I think as an artist, if you do it well, it's very useful from a point of view of being able to, introduce yourself to other artists wanting to introduce themselves to you. It feels like, I mean, some people use it as a sort of real, kind of bartering tool or something. But, I think it doesn't have to be that. I think it can be more of a kind of something you can give back to people. Something you can share in a positive way, not if you put me on your playlist, I might put you at number. I've had this before, whether I'll put you at number 10 on my playlist, but you're, only if you put me at number 5 on yours or something. And it gets really ridiculous, and it's I think that's best avoided, really. But people do get like that about playlists, or like they get very irate if you don't put them on it, and it's like, sorry, my playlist, I don't actually like your tune, so I am not going to put you on. That's just kind of my choice, but by all means set up your own playlist and don't put me on it. But like, it's like, you're not trying to sort of do someone out of something. You're not trying to be mean. I think some people do seem to be very, very tough on their criteria for their playlists, and they think that their playlists are so special that they can afford to be like that. I mean, I do tend to have myself a much wider view that it doesn't have to necessarily be absolutely the best track that I've ever heard or the track that I love the most. It's just got to be, is this, a track that would work well on this list? Is this, and give it a chance. Because that's the other thing. You don't always, when you're listening to something, even as a curator, you're only listening to a sort of, maybe a minute or something, or a few minutes of a track. I mean, the very first time I listen to a track, I might be like, oh yeah, I think that's quite good, but I'm not sure whether it's a grower or not. Is it going to sort of be something I really love? But if I listen to that on a playlist then a few times, I might actually start to go, oh no, I don't really like this one. Or I love it, and it really grows on me. So, music doesn't just necessarily, it's not an instant thing, is it? I mean, what do you think? When you listen to tracks, does it take time for those tracks to sort of maybe become real things you love and listen to a lot?
I think with regards to that, I've had it many instances. I think I'm the sort of person who a track will grab me straight away. I know there is the argument of you've got to give a track time and a grower as such. Yeah. And I think I've had albums that have done that when I've listened to an album. Right. But I think if a song is gonna reach out to me, I sort of get it pretty quickly. Right. But I can still appreciate good music, But I think for me, songs initially grab me if it's a real standout track. But then, in saying that, like I said, a good song is a good song. But going back to what you said earlier, just now, Tim, about playlist curation and upsetting people, I find it's kind of like parking spaces, on playlists, and how, because we're British, we can and the British thing about parking spaces and parking outside your house sort of thing, you can get very protective, and someone does X, you do Y, and but now going back to your other question about songs standing out, that's my perception. I think a song and it will call to me straight away. What are your thoughts, Carl?
I think I see both sides of it, because growing up, and I guess I spent a lot of money in the 90s from the jobs that I had as a teenager buying CDs, and I always liked that a band would release their first single, and that single grabbed you, hooked you in ahead of the album, then the album got released, then you got the second single, then the third single was always the more down-tempo single, but it was still single material, and then typically you ended up with a fourth single off an album. Some bands had great albums and they managed to get out 5 singles off an album, but say you got sort of 4 singles, by the time you sort of familiarise yourself with the album, all the other non-single tracks are the ones that are clearly not single choices, but as you said, Mark, they're still great music. And actually I'd heard the singles so much in the build up to the album release, then the build up to the tour, that I'd just overplayed those singles, so it was the non-singles that kind of attracted me on the albums after a period of time, because I would listen to them and it'd be like, these are my favourite tracks in the albums, not the one that I've heard a million times or seen on MTV or all of that. So there's the ones that draw you in, but there's definitely the growers as well.
Yeah.
But it's a different world now, though, isn't it? It's absolutely different. And my own experience of releasing music is I put out just singles, so I have to release something that I think, would somebody listen to this on its own? Because I can't make it an album filler, because I don't have an album. So it's a different approach, a different world that we're in now.
So here's an interesting question. This is going slightly off on a tangent now. What would you say is your most overplayed album? Give you a bit of time to think. For me, whilst you think about the answer, for me, probably my most overplayed album, still one of my favourites, is Metallica, Master of Puppets. And I remember in my teens, I played the shit out of that album to the point whereby it annoyed my friends, and they were like, "Mark, you're not going to put that on again in the car, are you?" And I'm like, "Oh yes, on comes Battery, cranking it up."
Yeah.
And it was released in the year I was born as well, so I was like, it's meant to be Master of Puppets. But what was your most overplayed album? Let's go, Carl. Go on.
I mean, overplayed sounds like it's a bad thing, but I regularly still listen to Dark Side of the Moon. Pink Floyd are my favourite band, so Dark Side of the Moon, I just, it could have been The Wall, but The Wall's double the length of Dark Side of the Moon, so you can't overplay The Wall, really. But no. Dark Side of the Moon, it's just perfect. It's 40 minutes long. It's got a brilliant flow in terms of the tracks. There's an intro track, there's a build-up, there's kind of peak moments in the album. It has the themes going through it. It's a super interesting album to listen to, and the production on it's incredible for 1972, 1973, 50 years ago. Is absolutely stunning. So overplayed, absolutely. How many times have I bought it? I've probably lost count. I think I'm on my 5th or 6th copy now. All the 5.1 mixes, the Blu-ray mixes, the remasters, the live versions. It's just wild.
Wow.
But I love it, and definitely overplay it.
Have you got
the producer for 7.1. The producer for Dark Side of the Moon, I'm sure, was Alan Parsons. Was it Alan Parsons?
Yeah. He did. He wasn't the producer as such. He did the early mixes.
Engineer.
He was like a mix engineer, but he did the early mixes off it. The Alan Parsons mixes didn't officially get released until maybe I think a couple of years ago. They did. I think the Immersion box set, which is a massively expanded version, it's like 6 CDs and Blu-rays. It's sitting in the next room, no surprise. That does, I think, have the Alan Parsons mixes, and it's quite interesting how they are different, because he was a bit of a character in the music world at the time as well. So it wasn't. It was just Alan Parsons, that guy that did Dark Side of the Moon. He had his own career beyond that, but I actually can't remember who produced it, which is Tim. I don't know if you know who produced Dark Side.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of it myself, and I can't recall it. I'll have to Google it.
I remember
I know Alan Parsons was involved in. Yeah, definitely involved in it. In that era of their thing, but I can't remember who produced it, which is terrible.
I'll kick myself when I hear it, because I should know it inside out. It's ridiculous.
But
okay, so moving on to you, Tim. Then, just on the side note, there, Alan Parsons. When I was doing my training, I read a lot of Alan Parsons books, which is why I mentioned him with regards to mixing and engineering and what have you.
Yeah,
and he's a very well-spoken man as well. When you listen to him talk, very well-spoken.
Well, the whole of Pink Floyd are very well-spoken, aren't they? They all own trout farms.
They are. Listen to Dave Gilmour talk about synths. It's quite entertaining.
No.
Anyway, so Tim, all right.
There's a long story about our sofa and Dave Gilmour, but I won't go there. Anyway, but it's a complicated aisle 9 meandering story. Basically, if I had to choose an album, which is really, really hard, that I might have overplayed, it's probably one of the first, if not the first album. No, I think it was the second album I ever bought, which is Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous, which is a live album. And I had honestly, at this point, like everything in my life that's good, it was an accident, because I really did not know what I was buying very much at that point, because I was just like, the first album I ever bought was Nobody's Heroes by Stiff Little Fingers, which turned out to be an absolute corker of an album, and I still love that. When I occasionally do grab it, I still think, bloody hell, what an amazing album. Then after that, I sort of bought what you'd almost have thought was like a different kind of thing, because one's sort of punk edged and the other is like definitely, heavy rock kind of territory, like with Thin Lizzy. But I had no idea what a great album that was, and it's like a live album, and it's a double album, and apparently, allegedly, they might have replaced almost all the music on it apart from the kick drum. But like, you know, which was a bit of a kind of question of these live albums, how live they were. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I really am pretty sure that's not true, listening to them. And they were meant to be a very good live band, but there was definitely some overdubs and stuff. But I really don't think that matters, because it's just like an album that plays superbly from beginning to end. Of like, it's like sort of, considering it's actually a bit like Van Halen's sort of, you know, first album that sort of just at the end of the 70s. It's a 70s album that still just does not sound like it came out the 70s, you know. It's got that kind of power and drive of like a real proper rock album that would have been produced later. So, but I don't ever think they did an album in many ways that sounded as good as that.
Yeah.
And it just had loads of life to it, and just the most amazing guitar stuff all over it, like twin guitars, and I mean, you know, it's guitar candy. It's like, you know, guitarist wet dream, yeah. But like, you know, and like fantastic, like vocals and bass playing as well by Phil Lynott, who I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah,
I just think he was a brilliant writer, and I can't. It's the sort of
Me
thing
too,
as well where
yeah.
people like play bass and sing. I mean, I love Police. I'm a huge Police fan, and like, you know. And I constantly think that people are saying, like, oh, Sting, he's not that good, is he, at bass playing? I think, like, have you ever tried playing any Police song and singing it at the same time? It's like, you know, these kind of things where people do these sort of things, and so I love that kind of sort of stuff. But, you know, yeah, so that's probably my overplayed
It was Chris
album,
Thomas
I would
that
say.
produced Dark Side of the Moon.
Still listening
and,
to it all these years on.
Yeah, and Chris Thomas is incredible,
Great stuff.
because basically he was still in. He says, well, we're recording the Beatles' White Album, come on down there.
Chris
And
Thomas.
he co-produced it to an extent on the White Album in '67, and then he produced Dark Side of the Moon, then he produced Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols, then he produced In Excess, his biggest hit in 1987 with the Kick album. This guy is just like, everything he touches is like gold in terms of from decade to decade, but yeah.
No. Yeah, legend. I thought you were going to say he was
That's
still
amazing,
in school when
isn't
he
it?
produced Dark Side of the Moon. That would have been I was still in school when I produced.
I think it's a different era. Like, I'm well aware we're going to have to wrap things up shortly. It's a different era. Imagine, like, your message, or your message, your Instagram DM George Martin and say, like, do you mind if I want to learn a bit about audio engineering? Can I come and drop by
Pop
Abbey
down,
Road?
yeah, make the tea.
You'd never get that now. Yeah, you'd never get it, which is a real shame. Real shame. It now would be, go online and fill out this intern form. Well, are you amongst many others, and we'll get back to you, which is a real shame. But hey,
I used to have studio assistants, and I employed some studio assistants on the complete, like, sort of reason, just people who roll up and go like, oh, I'd like to be your studio assistant. I go, okay. And like, you know, I never had anything money-wise to pay them very much, but like, you know, bung them a few quid if I had any at the end of it, and that was the agreement. But like, just fantastic, like guys who were just like really keen to learn and would just like bundle in and be on every sort of weekend session or something, and just like, you know, run around, go and get the food for people, and sort of, you know, but I would always try not just to do that and start to get them to do things like, go, all right, okay, we're tracking vocals or whatever, leave them tracking the vocal for this one, or do get them doing something. It was always a bit hairy when you did that, and you just weren't quite sure how badly wrong it was going to go. But like, you know, but you have to actually jump in at the deep end and sort of give someone the favours and let them do these things, you know, because I think that's an amazing way to learn any kind of skill, and particularly audio and music and stuff. And you're right, it's really hard to get into, because like people will just like, you know, fill out this form or this, that or the other, or give me a job, and realistically most studios don't really have a job for you, so you kind of have to make a job for yourself, you know. I mean, it used to be tape op was the thing, but like, you know, back in the days of when they would be operating the tapes and changing the tapes and all that kind of thing. We don't have that anymore, you know. You can't say, dust my hard drive drawer over there, please, you know. You know, redust it, it's not clean enough, you know.
I was just thinking that. I was like, what sort of studio are you running?
Well, you know. It would have been a very tough criteria if that was the case.
Oh, my days. Jets, we're almost approaching the hour mark, so what we'll do is, I'm well aware we didn't even get on to topic number 3, but we'll save that for next time.
It's not like we don't do that usually. No.
Yeah, I know. So as always, I'll give you the opportunity to just introduce yourselves and where can our audience find you? They probably know now, having listened to this being the third Synth Pals Virtual Pub. But where can they find you online? Well, I'll go from left to right because there's only two of you. Oh no.
You can normally find me on Marc Matthews Virtual Pub. No, you can find me. You can find me at R9 Music. Apart from Sundays when I'm likely to be otherwise engaged. Yeah, no. So R9 at R9 Music, and on Instagram, and at R9 Synthwave on Twitter, and YouTube and everything else.
Instagram, it's just
TikTok.
at Neon Highway.
Yeah, you know, when you stop
and
looking
there's a
at
link
endless
tree
cat
on there
videos,
that
you
takes
can
you
watch
to
me.
those other magical places.
Yeah, there we go. And
Excellent stuff. Excellent. And Neon Highway, Carl.
Oh yeah,
Marvellous stuff. Yes, R9 is whispering that he's a link tree too, so do go check that out as well. Gents, thanks for joining me. So just before we depart, audience, if you would like, once again, I said this at the beginning, if you'd like to partake, start again, put my teeth in one of these discussions that do go off on tangents, so if you are now listening at the end of the podcast, if you'd like to partake in one of these, do click on the link in the Calendly link in the episode description and book yourself a place on the next one.
Thanks, Graham.
Doesn't necessarily have to be in 4. It happens every 4 weeks, but if you want to book on one further down the line, that's fine. But yeah, do go ahead and book and join us on the next one. Gents, thanks for joining me today, and I will catch up with you soon.
Excellent. You're most welcome.